Jake Miller pressed his face against the cold window of the spaceship and stared at the planet below. The world looked like a giant marble painted in shades of red and brown. Strange clouds swirled around it like smoke from a campfire. This was Sector Prime, home to the reptile people called the Corvani. "Still can't believe we're actually here," Lisa Carter said as she walked up behind him. She carried a tablet full of alien language notes. For the past 6 months, she had been learning how to speak Corvani. The sounds were harsh and full of clicks that hurt her throat. Jake nodded but kept looking at the planet. As a scientist who studied alien life, he had dreamed of this moment his whole career. First contact with a new species. It was everything he had worked for since leaving his job as a park ranger on Earth. "The atmospheric readings are getting stranger," Dr. Amy Brooks called out from her station. She was the team's mind doctor, someone who studied how different creatures think and act. Her screens showed wild patterns of wind and weather. "Something big is happening down there." Commander Rick Stone walked onto the bridge with heavy steps. His face looked worried. At 42, he had seen combat in 3 different star systems, but alien first contact was new territory for him. "We just got a message from the Corvani. They want to talk to us right now." The main screen flickered to life. The image was fuzzy and kept breaking up with static. Through the interference, they could see a large reptilian face. The creature's skin was dark green with golden stripes. Its eyes were yellow and slitted like a snake's. When it opened its mouth to speak, they could see rows of sharp teeth. "I am Zethkar of the Corvani warrior caste," the alien said. The computer translated his words, but his voice still sounded like gravel in a blender. "We welcome you to our system, humans of Earth, but you must listen carefully to what I tell you now." Lisa stepped forward and activated the communication system. "We hear you, Zethkar. This is Lisa Carter speaking for the human expedition. We are honored by your welcome." Zethkar's head tilted to one side. Even through the bad connection, they could see he was nervous about something. "There is a place on our world where you must never go. We call it the Crimson Valleys. The Sekhmoth lives there." "The Sekhmoth?" Jake asked, leaning closer to the screen. "What is that?" The alien's eyes grew wider. "It is death itself, the greatest predator our world has ever known. For thousands of years it has killed any who enter its territory. Our strongest warriors fear it. Our wisest hunters avoid it. No being in all the galaxy has ever tamed such a creature." Amy was recording everything on her equipment. The fear in Zethkar's voice was real. His stress patterns were off the charts. Whatever this Sekhmoth was, it terrified these warrior aliens. "How big is this creature?" Commander Stone asked. "Bigger than our largest war machines," Zethkar replied. "Its claws can cut through our strongest metal like it was soft grass. Its roar can be heard for many miles. When it hunts, the very ground shakes under its feet." Lisa exchanged glances with Jake. "Have your people tried to study it? To understand why it's so aggressive?" Zethkar made a sound that might have been laughter, but it held no humor. "Study it? Many have tried. None have returned. The Sekhmoth leaves no survivors. It kills everything that enters the Crimson Valleys. Even our flying machines are not safe. It can leap higher than our tallest buildings." Jake felt his scientist brain kicking into gear. Something about this didn't add up. In his years working with dangerous animals on Earth, he had learned that most predators weren't mindless killing machines. They had reasons for their behavior. "What does it eat?" he asked. The question seemed to surprise Zethkar. "Eat? It eats everything. Anything that moves, anything that lives. The Crimson Valleys are empty of all life except for the Sekhmoth." "But that's impossible," Amy said quietly. "No ecosystem can support an apex predator without a food chain." Zethakar's image flickered again as the connection got worse. "I do not understand your words, human. I only know that the Sekhmoth is death. You must promise me you will not go to the Crimson Valleys. Your soft species would not last even moments against such a beast." Commander Stone stepped forward. "We appreciate the warning, Zethkar. We'll be very careful about where we set up our research base." "Good," the alien said. We will meet you at the agreed landing site in the northern plains. There you will be safe from the monster. But remember, humans, the Crimson Valleys are forbidden. Do not let curiosity kill you as it has killed so many of our people." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake stared at the empty screen, his mind racing. Lisa was already pulling up maps of the planet on her tablet. Amy was reviewing the recording of their conversation. Commander Stone was planning their descent route. "Anyone else think this is strange?" Jake finally said. "An apex predator that kills everything but somehow keeps living in an area with no food sources." "Maybe it travels to hunt," Lisa suggested. "Uses the valleys as a home base." Amy shook her head. "The behavioral patterns don't match. True apex predators are usually territorial but not mindlessly aggressive. There's always a reason for their actions." Jake pulled up the ecological scans they had taken from orbit. The Crimson Valleys showed up as a bright red area on the planet's surface, but when he looked closer at the data, something caught his attention. "Look at this," he said, pointing to his screen. The others gathered around. The scans showed unusual plant life in the valleys. Lots of vegetation, actually, more than in the surrounding areas. "That doesn't look empty to me," Jake said. "Commander?" Stone frowned. The alien said nothing lived there except the monster. "Maybe the Corvani don't know everything about their own planet," Jake replied. He had seen this before during his time as a park ranger. Local people often had stories about dangerous animals that were more legend than fact. Fear could make people see monsters where there were only misunderstood creatures. Lisa was already studying the landing coordinates. "The northern plains are about 200 miles from the valleys. We could set up there and then maybe send some probes to take a closer look." "Absolutely not," Commander Stone said firmly. "We're not risking anyone's life based on curiosity. The Corvani have lived here for thousands of years. If they say something is dangerous, we listen." But Jake was still staring at the scans of the Crimson Valleys. Something was calling to him about that place. Maybe it was his years of working with wild animals. Maybe it was his scientists' need to understand the unknown. Or maybe it was just human stubbornness. Whatever it was, Jake knew that sooner or later he was going to find out the truth about the Sekmoth. 3 days had passed since they landed on Sector Prime. The human base camp sat in the middle of the northern plains like a small metal island. Commander Stone had set up defense barriers and security sensors all around their temporary home. The Corvani visited twice each day, bringing gifts of food and sharing stories about their world. But Jake could not stop thinking about the Crimson Valleys. Every morning he would climb to the top of their communication tower and look south toward the Forbidden Zone. Through his binoculars he could see red cliffs rising from the ground like giant teeth. Strange mists floated around them, and sometimes he thought he saw flashes of color in the distance. "You're going to wear out those binoculars," Amy said, as she climbed up to join him. She carried 2 cups of coffee and handed one to Jake. "Still thinking about our mysterious monster?" Jake took the coffee gratefully. The morning air was cold on this alien world. "Something doesn't add up, Amy. Look at the scan data again. That place is full of life, not empty like Zethkar said." Amy had been reviewing the information for days. As their behavior expert, she wanted to understand the Sekmoth as much as Jake did. "I've been thinking about that too. Maybe the Corvani can't see certain types of plants. Their eyes might work differently than ours. Or maybe they're just too scared to look closely," Jake replied. He had seen this many times back on Earth. People would claim an area was haunted or cursed when, really, it was just home to a misunderstood animal. Lisa joined them on the tower, breathing hard from the climb. "Commander Stone wants to see you both. The Corvani are asking us to move our base even further north. They say we're still too close to the valleys." Jake and Amy looked at each other. "How much closer does Stone want us to get to the safe zone?" Amy asked. "About 50 more miles," Lisa said. "But here's the interesting part. I've been learning more of their language, and I heard Zethkar talking to his warriors. He used a word I haven't heard before, something like Velnok. When I asked him what it meant, he got very quiet and changed the subject." Jake felt his excitement growing. "Did you check the language database?" "I tried, but it's not in any of their official communications." I think it might be an old word, something from their history that they don't like to talk about. The three humans climbed down from the tower and walked to the main command tent. Commander Stone was studying maps with two Corvani warriors. Zethkar looked up when they entered, his yellow eyes showing worry. "Humans," Zethkar said in his rough voice. "We must discuss moving your camp. The wind patterns have changed. Sometimes the Sekhmoth follows new scents. It may detect you here." Jake stepped forward. "Zethkar, can you tell us more about the history of your people and the Sekhmoth? How long has it lived in the valleys?" The alien's expression grew darker. "Always, since the beginning of memory. Since the first Corvani walked this world. But there must be old stories," Lisa pressed. "Legends about how it all started." Zethkar exchanged glances with his companion warriors. They spoke quickly in their own language, too fast for Lisa to follow. Finally, Zethkar turned back to the humans. "There are old words, old fears. But they are not for young minds to hear." Amy leaned forward. "We're not young minds, Zethkar. We're scientists. We study dangerous things so we can understand them better." The alien was quiet for a long time. Outside the tent, they could hear the wind picking up. Strange bird-like calls echoed across the plains. Finally, Zethkar spoke again. "Very well. But you must promise never to act on what I tell you." "Commander," Stone nodded. "You have our word." Long ago, before my grandfather's grandfather was born, the Corvani lived in many places on this world. Some lived in the valleys you call Crimson. They told stories of great beasts that shared the land with them, not as enemies, but as— he struggled to find the right word. As neighbors. Jake felt his heart beat faster. "Neighbors? You mean they lived together peacefully?" "The old stories say yes, but something changed. A great war came to our world. Many Corvani died. The survivors fled to the plains and deserts. When they tried to return to the valleys, the great beasts would not let them. The Sekhmoth became the guardian of the forbidden places." Lisa was writing down every word in her notebook. "What caused the war?" "No one remembers. The old knowledge was lost. Now we only know that the valleys are death for our kind." Amy stood up and walked to the tent opening. "Zethkar, what if the Sekhmoth isn't trying to kill your people?" "What if it's trying to protect something?" The alien made a sound like a growl. "Protect what? There is nothing in the valleys but death. You said your ancestors lived there once. What if there are still things there that matter to the Sekhmoth? Old places, old memories?" Zethkar stood up quickly, his tall frame towering over the humans. "You speak dangerous words, small human. The Sekhmoth kills, that is all it does, that is all it has ever done." But Jake could see doubt in the alien's eyes. "Zethkar, have any of your people actually seen the Sekhmoth kill someone? I mean, seen it with their own eyes?" The tent fell silent. The wind outside grew stronger, rattling the walls. Zethkar looked at his warrior companions, then back at the humans. "The hunting parties that enter the valleys do not return. We find only torn metal and blood." "But no bodies?" Amy asked quietly. "The Sekhmoth devours everything," Zethkar replied, but his voice was less certain than before. Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Commander Stone, I want permission to do a reconnaissance mission to the edge of the Crimson Valleys." "Absolutely not," Stone said immediately. "We're not risking anyone on a theory." "Not into the valleys," Jake said quickly. "Just close enough to take some readings to see what's really there." Zethkar stepped forward, his claws extended. "I forbid this. You will die, and your deaths will be on my conscience." "What if we used remote probes first?" Amy suggested. "Small flying cameras that could scout the area safely." Lisa looked up from her notes. "Actually, that's not a bad idea. We brought survey drones for mapping. We could send them in from a safe distance." Commander Stone considered this. "The drones have a range of about 20 miles. We could stay well back and just observe." Jake felt hope rising in his chest. "It's a start. We might see something that explains the mystery." Zethkar shook his head violently. The Sekhmoth will destroy your flying machines just as it destroys everything else. Maybe, Jake said, but maybe not. Maybe it will ignore them if they don't. Threaten whatever it's protecting. The alien stood quietly for several minutes, thinking. Finally, he spoke. If you must do this foolish thing, I will come with you. When your machines are destroyed and you see the truth of the Sekhmoth's power, perhaps then you will understand why we fear it. Amy smiled. Thank you, Zethkar. Your knowledge will help us stay safe. Safe? The alien laughed bitterly. There is no safety when the Sekhmoth hunts. But I will not let you die alone from your curiosity. As the group made plans for their scouting mission, Jake felt a strange excitement building inside him. Tomorrow, they would get their first real look at the Crimson Valleys and the creature that guarded them. Whatever they found there, he knew it would be unlike anything they expected. The drone camera showed them everything in perfect detail. Jake watched the screen as their small flying robot moved through the mist above the Crimson Valleys. Below them stretched a world unlike anything he had ever seen. Red trees with leaves, like fire, grew everywhere. Purple bushes covered in strange berries dotted the landscape. Crystal clear streams ran between rocks that sparkled in the alien sunlight. It was beautiful, not the empty wasteland of death that Zethkar had described. Look at all that plant life, Amy whispered from beside him. They were parked on a hill about 5 miles from the valley edge. Close enough to get good camera signals, but far enough away to run if needed. This place is like a garden. Lisa was recording everything on her tablet. The berries especially caught her attention. They were deep purple, almost black, and grew in thick clusters on tall bushes. I've never seen anything like those fruits before. They're not in any of our plant databases. Zethkar stood behind them watching the screen with his yellow eyes wide. This cannot be right. The valleys are empty, dead. Your machine must be broken. The drone is working perfectly, Commander Stone said. He was monitoring all the technical readings from their mobile command unit. What we're seeing is real. Jake guided the drone lower, moving it carefully between the trees. His years as a park ranger had taught him to spot signs of animal life, and he was seeing them everywhere. Broken branches where something large had passed, paths worn smooth by heavy footsteps, claw marks on tree bark. Something big definitely lives here, he said. But look at these feeding signs. He pointed to places where berries had been carefully picked from bushes. That's not random destruction. That's selective eating. Amy leaned closer to the screen. Those claw marks on the trees. They're high up, but they're not made from anger or territory marking. They look more like reaching marks, like something was trying to get fruit from the higher branches. Suddenly, the drone's motion sensors went crazy. The camera shook as something massive moved through the trees below them. All they could see were flashes of silver and black between the red leaves. There, Zethkar shouted, pointing at the screen. The Sekhmoth, see how it destroys everything in its path. But Jake was watching more carefully. The creature wasn't destroying anything. It was moving through the forest with surprising grace, careful not to damage the plants around it. It's not attacking the environment, he said. Look how it steps around the berry bushes. The drone followed the movement through the trees. Then suddenly they got their first clear view of the Sekhmoth. The creature was enormous, just as Zethkar had said. It stood at least 12 feet tall, with a body covered in scales that looked like liquid metal. 6 eyes, each as large as dinner plates, sat on its massive head. Its claws were indeed like black glass, gleaming and sharp. But it wasn't the monster Jake had expected. The Sekhmoth moved with the careful grace of an intelligent being. It stopped at a berry bush and delicately picked fruit with the tips of its claws, placing them in its mouth one at a time. When it drank from the stream, it did so without disturbing the water plants around it. It's not a mindless killer, Amy breathed. Look at how carefully it moves. That's the behavior of a thinking creature. Zethkar stared at the screen in shock. This is not possible. The Sekhmoth is a destroyer, a killer. The creature suddenly stopped eating and looked up. Its 6 eyes focused directly on their drone. For a moment, Jake thought it might attack the small flying machine. Instead, the Sekhmoth tilted its head to one side, studying the drone with obvious curiosity. "It knows we're watching," Lisa said softly. Jake made a decision that surprised everyone. "I'm taking the drone down for a closer look." "Are you insane?" Commander Stone shouted. "That thing will destroy it." "Maybe. Or maybe it won't." Jake guided the drone lower, moving it slowly and carefully. The Sekhmoth watched but didn't move from its spot by the berry bush. When the drone was about 10 feet away, the creature did something amazing. It picked several berries and held them up toward the camera, as if offering to share its food. The tent fell silent. Even Zethkar had stopped talking. "Did it just—" Amy started. "Offer food to our drone," Jake finished. "Yeah, it did." The Sekhmoth waited for several seconds. Berries still held out. When the drone didn't take them, the creature placed the fruit on a flat rock and stepped back. Then it made a sound that their audio pickups caught clearly. It wasn't a roar or a growl. It was almost musical, like a deep humming song. "That's communication," Lisa said, her voice full of excitement. "It's trying to talk to us." Jake felt his heart racing. This changed everything. "Commander, I need to go down there." "What?" Stone spun around to face him. "Absolutely not. No way. I'm not letting you commit suicide." "It's not suicide," Jake said. "Look at the evidence. The creature isn't aggressive, it's intelligent. It just tried to share food with our drone. That's peaceful behavior." Amy was nodding. "He's right. Everything we're seeing suggests a highly intelligent being that's more curious than dangerous." Zethkar finally found his voice. "You are all mad. The Sekhmoth kills. It has always killed. But has anyone ever tried to communicate with it?" Jake asked. "Has anyone ever approached it peacefully?" The alien's silence was answer enough. Jake stood up and started putting on his environmental suit. "I'm going down there with a bag of earth berries. Similar fruit might interest it." "This is insane," Commander Stone said, but Jake could see he was considering it. "If you're wrong, we lose our best xenobiologist." "If I'm right, we make the greatest discovery in human history," Jake replied. "First peaceful contact with an apex predator species." Amy was already checking her equipment. "I'm coming with you. You'll need someone to monitor behavioral changes." "Me too," Lisa added. "If it really is trying to communicate, you'll need a linguist." Zethkar shook his massive head. "I cannot let you do this thing. Your deaths will bring shame to my people." Jake stopped putting on his suit and looked at the alien warrior. "Zethkar, what if we're right? What if the Sekhmoth isn't your enemy? What if it's been waiting all these years for someone to make peace?" The alien stared at the screen where the Sekhmoth still waited by the rock with its berry offering. "If you must do this foolish thing, I will come too. When the creature kills you, I will at least be able to tell your people how you died." 20 minutes later, Jake walked through the red forest with a bag of earth strawberries in his hand. Amy and Lisa followed close behind, all their recording equipment active. Zethkar brought up the rear, his weapon ready but not drawn. The Gaia forest was even more beautiful up close. The air smelled like cinnamon and flowers. Birds with bright blue feathers sang in the trees above them. It was hard to believe this place had been described as a realm of death. They found the Sekhmoth exactly where they had left it, waiting by the rock with its berry offering still in place. When it saw them approaching, the creature made the same musical humming sound they had heard through the drone. Jake stopped about 20 feet away and slowly reached into his bag. He pulled out a single strawberry and held it up so the Sekhmoth could see it. The creature's 6 eyes focused on the small red fruit with obvious interest. Very carefully, Jake placed the strawberry on the ground between them and stepped back. The Sekhmoth approached the strawberry with the same delicate movements they had observed before. It picked up the fruit with the very tip of one claw and examined it closely. Then it ate the strawberry and immediately began making the happiest sound Jake had ever heard from any animal. The creature looked at Jake and hummed again, this time in a pattern that almost sounded like, "Thank you." Then it picked up its own berries from the rock and offered them again. stepping closer to the humans. Jake realized he was about to make history. He was about to be the first human to share a meal with an alien apex predator, and he was going to do it with berries. Jake had been visiting the Crimson Valleys for 6 days now. Each morning he would pack his bag with earth berries and walk into the Red Forest to meet his new friend. The Sekhmoth was always waiting for him in the same clearing, like a giant dog eager to see its favorite human. The creature had shown Jake so many wonderful things. It knew which streams had the cleanest water. It could find the sweetest berries growing in hidden places. It even seemed to understand that Jake was studying the valley and would lead him to interesting plants and rock formations. "This is incredible," Amy said as she watched Jake and the Sekhmoth share breakfast. The massive creature ate its purple berries while Jake ate an energy bar, both sitting on opposite sides of the clearing like old friends having a picnic. Lisa was busy with her translation work. She had been recording every sound the Sekhmoth made and was starting to see patterns. "I think it has a name for itself," she said, pointing to her tablet. "It keeps making this sound." She played back a recording of a deep, musical hum. "Sounds like crimson to me," Jake said with a smile. "That's what I'll call you, big guy." He held up another strawberry, and the creature made happy sounds as it carefully took the fruit. Amy was fascinated by everything she saw. "Look at how it moves when it's relaxed," she said, making notes on her tablet. "All the tension is gone from its muscles. Its pupils are dilated with curiosity, not fear or anger. This is a completely different creature than the one the Corvani described." Zethkar had been coming with them every day, but he mostly stayed quiet and watched. Jake could see the alien warrior was struggling with what he was seeing. Everything he had believed about the Sekhmoth was being proven wrong. "My people have been wrong for so long," Zethkar said quietly. "How is this possible?" "Fear can make us see monsters where there are only neighbors," Jake replied. He had learned this lesson many times during his years as a park ranger. When we're scared, we don't look closely enough to see the truth. On the 7th day, Crimson surprised them all. Instead of waiting in the usual clearing, the creature was standing near a large rock formation at the edge of the valley. When it saw Jake approaching, it made excited sounds and began walking toward the rocks. "It wants to show us something," Amy said. The rock formation turned out to be the entrance to a cave system. Crimson stopped at the opening and looked back at the humans, clearly wanting them to follow. "Should we?" Lisa asked nervously. "It's pretty dark in there." Jake checked his flashlight and looked at the creature. Crimson was waiting patiently, showing no signs of aggression or danger. "I think it's safe. It's never led us anywhere harmful before." The cave was bigger than Jake had expected. Their flashlights revealed smooth walls and a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above them. But what really caught their attention were the paintings on the walls. "Oh my God," Lisa whispered, shining her light on ancient artwork. "These are incredible." The paintings showed scenes of daily life from long ago, but they weren't just pictures of Corvani. They showed Corvani and creatures that looked like Crimson working together, hunting together, building together, living together. "This is your history," Jake said to Zethkar. "Your people and the Sekhmoth were partners once." The alien warrior stared at the paintings with wide eyes. "This cannot be real. These pictures must be lies." Amy was studying the artwork with her expert eye. "These paintings are very old, hundreds, maybe thousands of years old, and look at the body language in these scenes. The Corvani and Sekhmoth are clearly working as a team." Crimson led them deeper into the cave, to a chamber filled with strange objects. There were tools made from metal and stone, but they were too big for Corvani hands. There were also crystals that glowed with soft light, and carved stones covered in symbols. "These crystals," Zethkar said, his voice full of wonder. "We use these in our most important technology, but we have to dig deep in the earth to find them. How are there so many here?" Lisa was examining the carved stones. "I think these are some kind of writing, but it's not modern Corvani language, it's much older." Jake picked up one of the strange tools. It was clearly made for claws like Crimson's, but it also had places where smaller hands could grip it. "These were made for 2 different species," To use together, he said. Your ancestors and the Sekhmoth built these tools to share. Crimson made soft sounds and touched one of the glowing crystals with its claw. The crystal began to shine brighter, filling the chamber with warm light. It knows how to use the crystals, Amy said in amazement. This technology isn't just Corvani. It's a combination of both species working together. Zethkar sat down heavily on a stone bench. My people have forgotten so much. We lost our history when the Great War came. We only remembered the fear, not the friendship that came before. What happened during the war? Jake asked gently. The alien warrior looked at the ancient paintings again. Invaders came from space. They attacked our cities and killed many of our people. The survivors fled to the plains and deserts. But if these pictures are true, then the Sekhmoth must have stayed behind to guard the old places. Guard them for when you came back, Lisa said softly. They've been waiting for you to return. Jake looked at Crimson, who was still making the crystals glow with its touch. That's why you've been protecting the valleys. You're not trying to keep the Corvani out. You're trying to keep the old places safe until they're ready to come home. Crimson made a sound that was almost like a sigh. It touched Jake's hand gently with the tip of its claw, then pointed to the paintings of Corvani and Sekhmoth living together. It wants the old friendship back, Amy said. That's what it's been trying to tell us. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by the sound of engines outside the cave. Jake ran to the entrance and saw aircraft approaching the valley. They were Corvani ships, but they looked different from the peaceful ones that visited their base camp. These were military vessels painted in war colors. Hunting ships, Zethkar said grimly. They must have detected our daily trips to the valley. They're coming to rescue us from the monster. Jake felt panic rising in his chest. We have to stop them. They don't understand what's really happening here. But it was too late. The lead ship was already broadcasting a message in the Corvani language. Even without Lisa's translation, they could hear the anger and fear in the pilot's voice. Crimson came to the cave entrance and looked up at the approaching ships. The creature's posture changed instantly. All the relaxed, peaceful body language disappeared. Its claws extended, its scales seemed to shift to a darker color, and it made a sound that was definitely a warning roar. It's going into defensive mode, Amy said urgently. It thinks the ships are a threat to us. Jake ran toward Crimson, pulling berries from his bag. Easy, big guy, those are friends, no fighting. But Crimson was no longer listening. Its protective instincts had taken over. It stepped in front of Jake and his team, placing its massive body between them and the approaching ships. The first ship opened fire. The energy blast hit the rocks near Crimson's feet, sending stone chips flying. The creature roared in response, a sound so loud that it seemed to shake the entire valley. Stop! Jake shouted into his radio. Don't shoot. We're safe. But Commander Stone's voice came back filled with static and worry. Jake, we can see the creature on our scanners. It's moving to attack. Get out of there now. Jake looked at Crimson, who was preparing to leap at the nearest ship to protect the humans it had come to care about. He looked at Zethkar, who was torn between loyalty to his people and the truth he had discovered. He looked at the ancient paintings that showed a time when two species lived in harmony. Everything they had learned, everything they had built, together was about to be destroyed by fear and misunderstanding. Jake made the most important decision of his life. He stepped out from behind Crimson and stood between the creature and the ships, his arms spread wide. Jake stood in the open space between Crimson and the Corvani warships. His heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. Above him, 6 military aircraft hovered like angry metal birds, their weapons pointed at the massive creature. Behind him, Jake, get away from that thing. Commander Stone's voice crackled through his radio. It's going to kill you. But Jake didn't move. He could feel Crimson's warm breath on his back as the creature stood protectively over him. The Sekhmoth was ready to fight an entire Corvani battle fleet to keep the humans safe. Listen to me. Jake shouted into his radio. The creature isn't dangerous, it's trying to protect us. The lead Corvani ship landed about 50 yards away. The door opened and out stepped the largest Corvani Jake had ever seen. This warrior was covered in battle scars and wore armor decorated with medals. His yellow eyes burned with fury. I am Hunting Pack Leader Grixmoth. the alien announced in perfect English. "I have come to rescue you from this monster before it devours you like it has devoured so many of my people." Zethkar stepped forward, his own claws extended. "Grixamoth, you do not understand what we have learned here. The Sekmoth is not our enemy." The pack leader laughed bitterly. "Zethkar, you have been infected by human madness. Stand aside so we can destroy this creature and end its reign of terror." More Corvani warriors emerged from the other ships surrounding the clearing. Their weapons were all pointed at Crimson, who was growling low in its throat. Jake could feel the creature's muscles tensing, ready to fight. "Wait!" Amy shouted, running out of the cave with her tablet. "We have proof. Evidence that changes everything." Lisa followed her, carrying some of the glowing crystals they had found. "Look at these. Your people and the Sekmoth worked together to make these." Grixmoth barely glanced at the crystals. "Ancient lies and fairy tales. I care only for the safety of my warriors and the humans under our protection." Jake realized words weren't going to be enough. He needed to show them the truth in a way they couldn't ignore. Slowly, he reached into his bag and pulled out a handful of berries. Crimson saw what he was doing and made a soft, questioning sound. "It's okay, big guy," Jake said quietly. "Trust me." Jake held the berries up where everyone could see them. Then he placed them on the ground and stepped back. Crimson looked at the berries, then at Jake, then at all the weapons pointed at them. For a moment, Jake thought his plan had failed. The creature was too scared, too ready for battle. Then Crimson did something beautiful. It carefully picked up one of the berries with the tip of its claw and held it out toward Grixmoth. The pack leader stared in shock. What is it doing?" "It's offering to share food with you," Jake said. "It's trying to make peace." Grixmoth raised his weapon. "This is some kind of trick." But before he could fire, an elderly voice spoke from behind him. "Lower your weapons." Everyone turned to see a very old Corvani walking slowly into the clearing. This alien moved with the careful grace of great age, supported by a walking stick carved from crystal. The warriors immediately bowed their heads in respect. "Elder Veltara," Grixmoth said with surprise, "you should not be here. It is too dangerous." The old Corvani ignored him and walked straight toward Crimson. The creature watched her approach, but didn't move from its protective position over Jake. "Hello, old friend," Veltara said softly. "It has been far too long." Crimson tilted its massive head and made a sound unlike any Jake had heard before. It was sad and joyful at the same time, like someone crying from happiness after years of loneliness. "You know this creature?" Grixamoth asked in disbelief. Veltara reached into her robes and pulled out a small dried berry. It was purple, just like the ones that grew in the valley. "When I was very young, before the Great War, I had a friend who shared berries with me. I saved this one all these years to remember." She held out the ancient berry. Crimson lowered its great head and gently touched the fruit with its nose, making soft sounds of recognition. "The old stories are true," Veltara said, tears flowing from her eyes. "We did live together once, we were family." Lisa stepped forward with her translation tablet. "Elder Veltara, we found cave paintings that show the history. Your people and the Sekmoth were partners for thousands of years." Amy added, "The creature has been guarding the old places, keeping them safe for when the Corvani were ready to return." Veltara nodded slowly. "The Sekmoth never forgot the friendship even when we did. They have been waiting for us to remember." Grixmoth lowered his weapon, confusion clear on his scarred face. "But the attacks, the missing hunting parties, were defending sacred places from what they thought were invaders," Jake said. "They were trying to protect the old sites until the Corvani came home." Zethkar picked up one of the glowing crystals from the cave. "Look at this, Grixmoth. This is technology our ancestors built together. We have forgotten so much of our own history." Elder Veltara walked over to where Jake was standing. "Human, you have done something remarkable. You have brought two species back together after 1,000 years of separation." Jake felt Crimson's claw gently touch his shoulder. The creature was no longer tense for battle. It seemed to understand that the danger had passed. "How did you know to use the berries?" Veltara asked. Jake smiled. "On my world, sharing food is how we make friends. I thought it might work here too." Over the next hour, more Corvani arrived from the plains. Word had spread quickly about the discovery in the caves. Elder Veltara led groups through the ancient chambers, showing them the paintings and artifacts that told the true story of their history. Crimson seemed to enjoy being around Corvani again. The creature made happy sounds as it demonstrated how to activate the crystal technology, working alongside the alien scientists like it had never stopped. "This changes everything," Grixmoth said as he watched Crimson carefully move glowing crystals to power ancient machinery. "We could rebuild the old cities, restore the partnership our ancestors had." Jake was teaching a group of young Corvani warriors how to offer berries to Crimson safely. The massive creature was incredibly patient with them, making encouraging sounds when they got it right. "It will take time," Elder Veltara said. "Fear that has lasted for generations cannot be healed in a single day. But thanks to you humans, we have made the first step." Amy was busy documenting everything for her behavioral studies. "This is the most successful case of interspecies communication I've ever seen. You've basically created a template for peaceful first contact." Lisa had been working on translating more of the ancient writing. The old texts mention other valleys, other Sekmoth families. This might just be the beginning. Commander Stone's voice came through their radios with obvious relief. "Jake, I've got diplomatic teams from 3 different star systems asking for details about your berry sharing protocol. Apparently, word about peaceful predator contact travels fast." Jake laughed as he watched Crimson playing gently with a group of Corvani children who had arrived with their parents. The massive creature was incredibly careful not to hurt them, using just the tips of its claws to tickle them while they giggled. "You know what the best part is?" Jake said to his team. "It wasn't advanced technology or military force that solved this. It was just sharing food and being willing to listen." Elder Veltara overheard him and nodded approvingly. "The humans have taught us an important lesson. Sometimes the simplest gestures carry the greatest power." As the sun set over the crimson valleys, Jake sat beside Crimson under the red trees, sharing berries just like they had every day for the past week. But now they weren't alone. Corvani families were scattered throughout the clearing, learning to live alongside their ancient partners once again. The creature that the galaxy had called untamable was playing with children and helping scientists power ancient machines, all because one human had been brave enough to offer it a berry. Jake smiled as he watched the beginning of a new era of cooperation between species. Sometimes the most powerful weapons were kindness and understanding.